and welcome to Fireside Chats brought to you by Engaging Cities. I'm your host, Kelly Hickler, the community manager of Engaging Cities and the founder of Cinovation Studio. Each episode, we talk to the people behind the plan and learn about how community engagement helps to strengthen and bolster that plan. So on today's episode, we have the pleasure of talking to James Rojas and John Kamp, who I feel like need almost no introduction. You guys are like celebrities, basically, in the city planning, community engagement world. And I feel like no matter where I go, what state I'm in, what country I'm in, what conference I go to, I run into someone who knows you, who's worked with you, at least knows of your work. So congratulations on making such an impact in the world.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, but just for some of our listeners who maybe have been living under a rock and are not familiar with you, maybe give yourselves a little introduction and talk about the work it is that you do.
Hey, my name is James Rojas, and I'm a city planner and artist. And I use art making and storytelling as a way to get people engaged in planning. It all began when I worked at LA Metro, working on the transportation plans for the East Side. We would have meetings with 40 Latinos in the room, and all they would do is nod their head. Then you get some kind of person that speaks really loud about what they wanted to see. So it wasn't really a good situation. But at the same time, I opened up an art gallery in downtown Los Angeles. I worked with artists, and I thought, how can we as planners engage people the same way artists do their senses, do creativity and joy? They started bringing that process into the planning process, which kind of started the whole kind of place there kind of idea about based planning.
I'm
Yeah.
John Kamp. I'm a landscape urban designer, landscape contractor in the state of California, facilitator with Prairie Farm. So I'm Prairie Farm James's place that we did about 80% of our work together. I started Prairie Farm in 2008. It's definitely evolved over time. I think the biggest thing that I've tried to do is expand the scope and reach of the work so that we're engaging more people in the process. So it started as more of a top-down, I'm a designer, I do everything, and now a lot of what we do is engage people through their hands and senses, and at least part of the creation of spaces and places, the exploration of spaces and places, so that we're bringing in a broader cross-section of folks into the fold. So it's not just kind of the chosen few who are designing and building things, but we're bringing in a diverse array of folks into the process.
Yeah, I love it. And as a participant in your process before, I absolutely love it. It's so much fun. And if the listeners are not familiar with your place it method, it's basically taking found objects and using them to represent whatever you want them to be. And you start with recreating a childhood memory, right?
Mhm.
And then getting people into that creative space and then using that method to design whatever it is that you're talking about, a corridor or neighborhood or whatnot. And it's so inviting. It's so easy for anyone to do, and it's really fun.
Yeah.
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 Literally try
So
to remove barriers in the process.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
but also the whole idea is to really have people talk about the relationship between their body and land and other people, rather than the knowledge they have about a map plate.
Mm,
Very
very
transactional. How
yeah.
your body relates to space is really critical to how you understand the city or a place.
Yeah, I love that. It's not about how much you know.
Yeah,
Um,
well, how much you know on a rational level. I think that's what it is, right? I mean,
yeah.
we don't place a premium on we don't say one person's favorite childhood memory is better than another's, but we also don't expect people to understand how to read a map, for example.
Mhm.
Some kinds of like classic skills that you're supposed to have as a planner or designer. Designing at a scale is another thing that we don't require people
Mhm.
to do, even though that's something that's very That's like what you get trained to do in planning school designs. Well, not so much planning school, but definitely in design school to work at a scale. So we remove a lot of those things so that people, because those are barriers really to entry
Right.
process. Then people can be creative in a way that they couldn't otherwise. I mean, once you introduce scale to everyday folks and you ask them to be creative and work at a scale, they freeze up.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Like, even professionals do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we just did a weekend-long studio with students at WashU in St. Louis this past fall, and these are design students. So they were all like at least second years, so they had already been steeped in the whole process and as far as the kind of conventional design process.
Mhm.
We had them actually used for their models. So they built a 2-scale model, but then the materials they used for their interventions it was an urban design studio, and their interventions in these spaces and places, we have them use unconventional materials. We have them use all kind of materials we normally use, like pipe cleaners, barrel rollers, you name it. We gave them free license to cut them up and manipulate them and change them and alter them, but at a scale. So
Yeah.
they still had to work at that scale. But what they said is that, to your point about how scale can really cause people to freeze up, they said at the very least, this wasn't staring at a blank white screen and thinking, oh God, I have to like fill this with something and this kind of pressure to be perfect right off the bat. So we
Yeah.
got perfection, the premium of perfection out of it. And they said I just felt so much freer to explore
Yep.
ideas. And then the outcomes end up being a lot more playful in the process. And
Yeah.
that's great. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we want with this park project we're doing in Oakland. There is a definitely the phase one of it's done, and there is an element of playfulness and joy that I think you see in the space already, and I think that comes about because of the methods that we use, because they are rooted in playfulness and joy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, when that project's done, we'll have to have you back on the podcast to talk about that one. But,
Yeah.
today, I think you guys are gonna talk about some work you did in Yolo County.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell us about that.
So for folks who don't know, Yolo County is west of Sacramento and kind of north and a little bit south. So it does include West Sacramento itself, but then Davis is in Yolo County. Some incorporated towns, though a lot of unincorporated towns are in Yolo County. So it's a pretty rural
Agriculture.
agricultural county. And this project is looking at active transportation, so walking, rolling, biking, scooting, etc., in these towns, and how we can improve walking and rolling in these towns and also improve the connections between and among these towns.
Okay.
Yeah, so we were hired to do community outreach for these small unincorporated towns in Yolo County. We did 7 or 8 workshops, and been really fascinating because you're going to small towns that maybe they don't even have a traffic signal.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah, okay.
they're very rare to see a town rural in California, but there are towns like the Northern California in Yolo County. You have chickens right on the streets and stopping traffic and Windmill Corner Market. So we're tasked to do community engagement here, and as community members, they've probably never been to be a meeting at all. And it took a public meeting. So we had workshops in their local town hall they have in these small towns and bring people together, really start to build that capacity to understand what their needs are and who they are and what they value and how we can kind of move forward. For people that are first time, a lot of them were Spanish speaking. It's really being a process.
Okay. Did you were there translators there to help out?
Sometimes it
Okay.
depends on the group that shows up at the meeting. So sometimes we had folks who were Spanish only, so we would, I speak both Spanish and English, so I'll translate sometimes. So there are other people on consultant side or on the prime contractor,
Mhm.
people, prime, fair and peers who would speak Spanish, so we can just do kind of on the spot translation. So just
there's no formal PowerPoint, so it's really simple.
Yeah, right. Okay, got you. So you said there was a series of 8 workshops?
yeah. So we did one was a pop up. So we did a pop up event at a public health fair, and then the rest were workshops in
Mhm.
unincorporated towns in Yolo County. So we did a model building workshop at each one. We had people build their first memory of a mobility experience, and then we had them work in teams or groups build their ideal whatever the town is that we were working in. So build your ideal Yolo, for example. There's a town in Yolo County called Yolo, and we had them build their ideal Yolo for walking and biking. But then also thinking about the connection, like I said earlier, the connection between the town itself and then the other towns in the county.
Mhm. Mhm.
How to be able to get to those on foot or on bike or some other form of non-motorized transit.
Okay, got you. What's something that you think went really well throughout the whole process? Whether is it one particular thing at one workshop or maybe something across all the workshops?
I think one of the things that worked well is that we got people to engage in the process by using their hands and talking about their first mobility experience, and who we attracted was probably a different demographic. Like the fact last night we 2 nights ago was all women. And
Okay.
it's 2 girls, 11 and 12, kind of stole the show.
Yeah.
They had the prettiest model, the best idea. To, in fact, they weren't even planning to come into the meeting, but they were riding a bike outside and told them, we have bundles inside. They came in for bundles for the planning. They were first time ever doing anything like this. And they're
Yeah.
really interested to hear their ideas and stories and how they can conceptualize and build models with their material to talk about what they want to see in their community. And I think so. The process really went well in attracting people and engaging, especially Latinos in their communities, but otherwise kind of not go to a meeting or be bored at the meeting. It's like
Right.
and then plus people can bring their kids. There's a lot of kids and a lot of families that get attended to workshops, which is really nice.
Okay. Yeah, I think what's nice about your method is, like, I've been to workshops before or even facilitated workshops where kids are welcome, but there's like, oh, there's a separate kids area over there where kids go color or something over there. But with your method, the kid can participate
Mhm.
in the meeting too. That's really unique.
Yeah, and it's good to see parents and kids build together
Yeah.
instead of each other. Parents,
Yeah.
what the kids are thinking, and children have no idea where their parents come from, what their memories are. So it's really good to have that kind of bond.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I really like that.
I think one of the most valuable things that's come out of this process is just that it become very clear by way of the process that people want to walk and bike in small towns too. I think there's
Mhm.
this misconception that walking and biking are these things that urbanites do and want to do. It's, of course, we have urban neighborhoods in the country that are extremely expensive because people do want to walk and bike, and so they want to buy or own in these neighborhoods where they can walk and bike because these are in short supply. But the same can be said of folks in small towns. They don't want to just drive everywhere. And I think that the
Mhm.
big complaint that we've heard and some of the people have built in their models is towns where they can walk or bike to a coffee shop, or they can walk or bike to the post office, or they can walk or bike to see their friends,
Yeah.
or they can walk or bike or roll or scoot to not the next town over or 2 towns over. If they want to make a day of it, they could do that. So I think that's been one of the real values of doing this project through this process, because if we had done this just by way of having people talk and we had said, how do you want to make your town more walkable and bike? Invariably, they would have focused on dangers, right? They would have just focused on, well, here's this area that's dangerous. Okay, that's valid. That's important. But we also want to hear from them how the bigger ideas, right? What about, okay, so we know that this intersection is a problem and that's important to know, but what about some other parts of the town where you just want to think big and you want to be able to have an opportunity to walk and bike and explore and do all these other things. And those are the kinds of things that come out in these workshops when people work with their hands versus just talking.
Right.
Yeah, and definitely realize that these people here are very self-reliant. If they wanted to walk to nature or to socialize,
Mhm.
there wasn't really like walking to or from, like in the city, you walk to places.
Mhm.
We could have things to walk to, but here it's more self-reliant. So the walking is more based on this nature and socializing. They're not walking to all these stores or walking to these events because they don't have them there, but they walk for a different kind of reason.
But they want that. I will say they want
Mm.
that. They've said that over and over again. They want to be able to walk to, like in Dunnigan, for example, they wanted to be able to walk or bike to the post office, and they wanted to be able to walk or bike to the whole commercial area.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think they want both.
But it's very limited because they don't have a lot of things to walk. It's not like living in downtown LA, thing where you
Yeah.
can walk places,
Right. Yeah, it's more for recreation there.
socializing.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So when people built their models, how do you record their ideas?
So, what we do is we'll at once everyone's booked in the room or somewhere where everyone can see it, and then we'll just go from person to person and have them give us their name, the place of their memory, and then what the memory is, and then we just write it down or paraphrase it.
Mhm.
And then after that, we have people pull up the recurring themes of the memories. So if we didn't do that, it would be an activity that is kind of half finished because great, okay, everyone shares their memory, but we're not really seeing what we all have in common. And part of what we're trying to do with these workshops is build bridges and bring people together who might see themselves as, worst case adversaries, but
Mm.
best case just as strangers or people who seem different from each other. So in this case, when we have people pull out the recurring themes, they can start to really see, oh, okay, we do have a lot in common.
Hmm.
We have a lot in common. And then when they do the second activity, we do something very similar. We just write down, so they'll present what they've built, and we'll write down an abbreviated version of what they've built. We have also started adding, especially for this project in particular, we started giving them post-it notes. So once they're done with building,
Mhm.
have them label all the different parts of their models.
Okay.
This in part because some of what they were talking about was very place specific. So it was very much like, okay, this is this highway or this is
Mm.
this road or this is
Mhm.
this intersection. And because we did so many meetings, we needed to be able to keep track of all that. And I just felt like, okay, I'm not going to be able to remember that
Yeah.
this part model represents this street or whatever. So we
Yeah.
gave them post-it notes and they write down all their ideas, stick them next to what they built, and then I'll just take a picture at
Mhm.
that so that I have it, and then we can go back and reference the models and then the particular spots and locations in the models that people have filled those.
Okay.
And then we have them pull up the recurring themes of those models too. And those themes really serve as core values for the project moving forward. Core values for the community so they can recognize, oh, we're on the same page in a lot of ways in terms of what we
Mm.
want for our community. But they also serve as core values that can then guide the project as it moves forward and moves more into the design phase and looking at actual designs for these spaces and places in these towns.
Yeah, that's really neat how those themes or core values kind of naturally emerge through the process. And that was going to be my next question was how you incorporate that feedback into the plan. So it sounds like those core themes or core values that emerge kind of end up serving as the basis for the plan.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're really the guiding principles of the plan. They could be the guiding principles of the park project that we're doing in
Mhm.
Oakland, so they can be these core guiding principles for the design process. But the other thing too is that there's this whole concurrent track going on with this project where there's a lot of data analysis of pedestrian accidents between cars and bikes, cars and pedestrians, kind of hotspot areas, problematic areas in these towns. And there are also a lot of past plans and current plans that have identified areas for improvement. We're meshing and merging what comes out of these workshops with all of those
Mhm.
elements as
Okay.
well. So then we can have, for each town, we can have a set of priority areas for, say, an intersection that needs some serious road diets and traffic calming, to opportunities for some kind of trail, maybe a rails to trail project that connects one part of the town to another or that town to another town. So that's another way in which this more informal engagement is merging with this kind of more formal.
Yeah.
And also you want to see how, for the resident, you want them to see how their personal history and stories are embedded in this plan.
Hmm.
Not just that, to start with their story, their memory, the
Yeah.
places,
Mm-hmm.
drives the process forward. And now this is meshed into this plan. People come from all over where they come from, and these stories become this kind of collective basis for this process. So they see themselves in the plan, not
Oh
just me
yeah.
saying I'm designing the bikeway.
Yeah.
Here is kind of like your story from Mexico or from Southern California or from wherever you come from.
Yeah.
We lose way to this plan.
Yeah, it really personalizes the plan instead of just this dry, sterile, technical document. Now it has stories and history to it. That's really cool.
Absolutely.
Oh, was there anything that didn't go as planned or didn't work as well as you would hope that maybe you would change next time?
Like the weather. We we had one
Okay.
rainy. We were working in the Delta, and it was really wet, really heavy rain, so nobody came to the meeting.
Oh,
But
okay.
then you realize it's a built in the Delta. It's just kind of it's like Holland. These levees or water and land, so
Yeah.
really kind of dangerous place to drive. But that was one thing. I think a lot of the meetings were really, they felt really, because they're dealing with people that don't necessarily go to meetings, it felt kind of spontaneous. There's kind of spontaneous flair around it. That
Mhm.
just bringing people off the street, literally.
Yeah.
Fine, which is great. But it's just really, but you realize that you attracted people who care about their community to the meeting in this really loose kind of way. I don't know, and I don't know if you can make it tighter. I don't know if you could add RSVP or something.
Turnout is a challenge. These are really small places, so
Mhm.
it's a challenge to get people to turn out to a meeting in, say, some city in Southern California, which
Yeah.
has a lot of people, and then Southern California itself has a ton of people.
Right.
So that can be a challenge. I think in some ways it can be a challenge for other reasons because people are oversaturated with the activities.
Mhm.
There's the traffic issue and that kind of thing. But I think in general, it can just be a challenge to get people to come to meetings. So in this case, it was kind of the opposite, where these towns are tiny. So if we get 8 people to a meeting, that's good turnout. So
Yeah.
these towns are like 200 people.
Okay. Yeah, that's really good percentage.
Yeah, I'd say if you're thinking about like a survey and results of a survey,
Yeah.
like statistically significant. So in this case, 8 people is statistically significant.
Yeah. That's a statistically valid or representative sample.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Anyways, so otherwise, I feel like it's gone really well. I mean, I think the thing that you're always worried about, especially with transportation projects, is that people are going to come in and complain about parking. You're going to take away their parking.
Uh-huh.
And on that, people are going to complain about traffic. But because we're engaging people through their hands and not through talking, they're really not in that mindset. They can't be. I mean, it really does have to do with just brain activity and fundamental psychology. When you're working with your hands, you're not firing up the selfish part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex part of your brain. That's the part of your brain that's fired up if you're given your 2 minutes to speak in front of
Mm,
a group. And the
right.
question is, what do you want to see in your town to make it more walkable and bikeable? That's really when you set things up. It's kind of a recipe for disaster, because then people are in prefrontal cortex mode, survival mode, selfish mode. So they're going to say things like, well, I don't want people to take away my parking, and the traffic's bad here, and I don't want bike lanes, all that stuff. But then when you switch it and you have people work with their hands, they're not in that selfish survival modes. They're able to be aspirational, they're able to be collaborative, and they're able to be creative. And so then they'll really focus on what they actually want, like their dream for their community. Like, I would love to be this. I
Yeah.
would, that kind of thing. So then it's totally different. So it's not, I don't want this.
Yes.
I would love to see this. This would be amazing if we had this in our town.
Yeah.
Beautiful and wonderful. And wouldn't it be incredible if we could bike from Yolo to Dunnigan or whatever, it's from town to town?
Yes.
And also by having people start up and build a favorite child memory, you take away the whole idea of ownership. Because as children, we didn't own anything. We just played in space, and it was all
Yeah.
freeform, all open, accessible to us. So people don't see property values here as being what they're concerned about. So now you take
Mhm.
that for a moment, and now you're thinking about what, in general, what's best for the town, not their own personal
Mhm.
interest.
Oh,
So
yeah,
you
that's
have more, you
fascinating.
have a lot more public, you have more of a utopian spirit then.
Well, they don't own property. I think that's what you're trying to say.
Well, I'm just saying that as kids, you don't own property. People never talk about, I don't miss this and this. It's always like, plant a tree, I pick
Yeah.
flower. And then you
Yeah.
say, but never
Right.
do what they owned.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
think you tell people, so I put people in that mindset where ownership isn't what you're there for, property values.
Right. Yeah. It takes you out of that self-interested mode into more of a community, like other centered, not self-centered.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I do think, I will say, kids do go through a phase where they're like, this is mine.
Yes.
That, I feel like that's part of child development, is that kids go through a phase where like, this is mine, this is my house, this is my whatever.
Uh-huh.
But, even in our workshops, we have kids in our workshops, they never say stuff like that, right? They're never in that. Even if they are in that phase of their lives where they're thinking, mine, do that in the workshops.
Mhm.
Again, it has to do with brain activity. And when you're working with your hands and you're working with your hands with other people, kids tend to really calm down, and they are able to make room for other people's ideas. And adults in the same way. So
Yeah.
we get the question all the time about our audience, and the people will say, well, you guys must work with kids a lot. And actually, that's not the case. Maybe 10% of our work is with kids specifically. The rest is with grown-ups. And part of it is that we're trying to get grown-ups to think more like kids in that kind of expansive,
Mhm.
curious way that
Mhm.
kids are very naturally, in that way, and that we become less and less of as we get older, or we tend to become less curious and less open. I mean, that's a really terrible thing. I think about getting older. In some ways, you are, you know more, you might be more sure of certain things, but you also
Mhm.
be more rigid.
Oh, yeah.
We're trying to get people to, like, it's like a record with grooves in it. We're trying to get people to break out of those grooves in that record.
And also to revisit their relationship to land. So I tell people, your favorite child memory is probably the only time in your life where you had this really close relationship to the landscape. You're playing with mud, you're eating mud, you're touching mud. It's not a flower. As adults, we move ourselves with everyday experience of being in the land.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to remind people of how important land is to your psychology. So when you're in a car, you're on the landscape, not in the landscape.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
just the landscape.
that's good. Oh, that's a good distinction. I'm gonna remember that. You're on the landscape, not in the landscape. I feel like that even sometimes riding a bike, when you get going pretty fast, you
Mhm.
it's like the same thing where everything's just going by and you're not really experiencing it. There's, like, nothing can replace walking
Walking.
through a town, through a place.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Alright. Is there any words of advice that you would share with someone who is undertaking a similar project?
Start with the hands and the senses. Yeah, that's the key at the end of the day. It doesn't matter how great your presentation is that you put together at the beginning, explaining the project, talking about what you want people to understand. If you don't engage people to their hands and their senses, they are going to ultimately end up in that prefrontal cortex survival mode
Hmm.
in a community meeting setting. And so they're going to end up saying the same things that we've heard over and over again.
Mhm.
Parking, less traffic, no density, no growth. So that's it. It's as simple as that. We're biased, of course, but we also see the real results and the radical change in outcomes when you
Mhm.
engage in senses and not through language. I think there's a lot of engagement going on right now that's well-meaning, but that's just so focused on language. And if you engage people through language, they're not going to be able to be creative. And a lot of times they'll freeze up even. We actually don't even set ground rules for meetings. We never say you must use these words, don't use these words. We need to be a nice person. You need to be the
Yeah.
people, we never do that because when people work with their hands, their best selves come out.
We never do an
Yeah.
introduction. Because we want people want people want to introduce people to each other to their childhood memory, not about their
Right.
professionals.
Yeah, so the
Oh.
activity,
I think also just approach these events like a party, social event. You have a really good opportunity to bring people together and be happy and joyful. You
Yeah.
want to lead with that, so they come back for more meetings. More,
Yeah.
we do go to meetings in our neighborhood because they're always very argumentative. And why do you want what do you want to arguing? You know, I like my neighbors, but I hate the meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder how many planners go to their own meetings in their own town.
right? That's a
Probably
good
not
point.
very many because 'cause they're usually boring or, yeah, argumentative or controversial. It's like, no, I don't even wanna go to my own meeting in my own town.
Yeah, we've literally been to one neighborhood meeting here, and it was so contentious and awful. And it was the textbook example of a precious few dominating the entire meeting. So who are
Mhm.
the people who dominate the meeting? They're people who aren't afraid of conflict. They're not afraid of public speaking. They're
Right.
okay getting up in front of a group of people and talking or yelling.
Yeah.
They're, you're right, and that's a very, very small subset of the population who can do that. I don't think people realize how afraid most people are of public speaking.
Oh god, yeah, I think that's, like, the number 1 fear or, like, it might be number 1 or maybe it's number 2 after death. I don't know, it's really high up
Right.
there for people's fears, public speaking.
Yeah, and we've created a whole system of engagement and community engagement around public speaking.
Uh-huh.
And that's the very thing that people one of the things that people are the most afraid of across the board. If we do a presentation and I ask the group, doesn't matter where, doesn't matter the age, if I ask the group who likes public speaking, I'll get maybe one hand or maybe a half hand,
Yeah.
maybe if I have to.
Yeah.
So our idea democracy and democracy in action in this country is really like the person standing up in front of a group and speaking their mind. It's like the guy in the soapbox or
Mm-hmm.
the podium, or you're on a stage and you're speaking your mind, you're rallying the troops and you're getting everyone all excited. But that, again, that's a very particular kind of person who
Right.
is okay with doing that, is comfortable with
Right.
doing. And then you add in, say, a language barrier as well. So maybe your first language isn't English and you're going to be even less comfortable. It could be. Some people will be comfortable, but a lot of people won't be,
Mm-hmm.
speaking something that's not their first language in front of a large group of people. And a lot of this, again, it comes back to psychology. What I was saying earlier, you can come up with the most convincing, polished presentation you can possibly come up with for something about active transportation or urban design or walkable streets or whatever. But if you're engaging people through language, you're still going to be firing up a particular part of your brain,
Yeah.
their brains, that's not the creative, aspirational part of their brains. And the same is true with public speaking. We don't like public speaking because we don't like being stared at. That's really what it comes down to. And that's very primal. It has to do with when we lived out in the wild, and if something was staring at you, it meant that it wanted to kill you. Right.
Right. Oh gosh, yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, so you think about what's some nature show that you watched where the predator is scanning the open field or meadow or savanna or whatever it is for their prey, and like this sort of locking eyes onto the prey, right? And then
Yeah.
go after the prey, or a mountain lion in the Angeles National Forest in Southern California, right? I mean, that's what happens. They lock eyes on the prey. And so this is what we're feeling in a very primal way when we're up in front of a group of people. We don't know that, right? Unless you know about psychology, you know about this.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't know that. You're not like, oh crap, all these people are staring at me. I feel like they want to kill me. But that is essentially what's happening. There are all these people eyes on you, and it's stirring up that primal fear of like, oh crap. This
Yeah. I've heard too that it has to do with people are worried about getting cast out of the group, that if you say something wrong, that you're gonna be expelled from the group. I Is that part of it too?
Yeah, but could you not getting the immediate response from people when you're speaking up in public, right? It's not a conversation. You're not getting even like the facial cues that you will get in most conversations.
Mm.
You,
Mhm.
you know, so if you think about you yourself sitting in an audience listening to someone talk, it's not like at every moment of the presentation, you're nodding your head and you're smiling and you're raising your eyebrows, or you're making you might do that a little bit, but not that much. So when you're up in front of a group of people, you're not going to get all the cues that we give each other when we're in a conversation that make the other person feel comfortable. So
Mhm.
smiling, for example, is something that we might do in response to a joke, but a lot of times we're smiling because we're giving that person we're talking to this sense that they're being heard and that
Mm. Yeah.
you're comfortable and that you hear them and, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about, right? And you don't necessarily get that when you're speaking up in front of a group of people. So absolutely, and it can stir up these fears of, oh crap, these people must really not like what I'm saying, and they're
Yeah.
gonna come after me after the
Gosh,
pitchforks.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've been in meetings before where the loudest voices or the people who are comfortable speaking up have one opinion, and there's people in the audience who come up to me afterwards and say, "Well, we don't agree." There's actually a lot of us here who don't agree with that. We're just not comfortable getting up and speaking in front of I mean, I've been in meetings with 500 people. I I'm intimidated speaking in front of 500 people. So, I can't imagine someone who is not a professional, who doesn't, talk in front of people professionally, what they're gonna stand up in front of 500 people and have a different opinion, or
So
even if they're the minority opinion but they have a different perspective, are you gonna be the one to put yourself out there and go, "Well, actually, I think this." No, that's terrifying for people to do.
yeah, absolutely. And taking it back to the workshops we do, a big part of what we're doing is taking that fear out of the
Mm.
process. So there is no pressure for you to stand up in front of a group and
Mhm,
speak. The
mhm.
eyes are going to actually be on the model. So when you present, people are going to be looking at your model and
Yeah.
not right. So that takes a lot of the pressure off. And then, like we were saying earlier, no memory is better than another memory. So it's not some battle of the wills or some battle of might and stronger. And then when people work together in teams to build an ideal space or place, they're working with their hands. They're not hashing it out through language. And a lot of times when people hash things out through language, they tend to push people's ideas out of the way, right? Yes,
Mm.
I don't,
Yes, but
yes, but there's a lot of yes, but, and there's a sort of my idea is best, and I need to get everyone else to realize
Mm,
that.
mm, mhm.
Whereas when you build an ideal space or place, you literally make room for other people's ideas. You
Mm.
physically are making room for other people's ideas. You can see in the model that there is actually room, that it's possible to have all these different ideas within the
Yeah,
same space.
yeah, that's so cool. Do you have from these workshops that you did in Yolo County, do you have any particular moments or things that really stand out to you that were your favorite part of it?
I think for us, it was really we, the people that care, me, the people that really want to drive change in these communities. It brings them out, and they come in. They the process they begin to see people who care and how you can really nurture that group of people to really move forward in this plan.
Mm,
I think one of the coolest things was just be able to go to these towns. These are overlooked places. They're very small. I think most people who go through Yolo County go through on one of the freeways, and they don't ever get off the freeway to
yeah,
actually go into these towns. And
yeah.
they have a lot of history in them. There are, I mean, beautiful historic churches. The town of Yolo has a brand new library in the center of town with this incredible kind of plaza gathering meeting area around it, but it looks like a house, like they built it in a kind of arts and craftsman bungalow style. So it does just look like this beautiful house, but it's a public space. The library and everything around it's public. But then the town has all these chickens and roosters that just roam freely around the town. So we're in the middle of dinner workshop and out just out the window you see around the perimeter
Mm,
library. So that for me has been one of the funnest parts, is just to be able to actually visit these towns and meet the people who live in these towns. Well, is it a big surprise that people want to walk and bike in these towns? It shouldn't be, but maybe it is a little bit. I think when you live in a city, you have these ideas about what people want in different places. Well, they must want this here, or they must want this there. You live in a small town, you must just want to drive everywhere. But that's not true. That's totally not true at all. People want the same things. And it's the recurring theme of so much of the work we do is that see that across the border, across the country, in different size places, with different demographics, that people want very similar things. They want to be able to walk. They want to be able to have places and spaces for gathering. They want opportunities for exploration, discovery. They want to be with their families, with friends. They want nature. They want a lot of nature,
mhm.
want trees. And that to me is one of the most striking things, because we're making less and less nature in some ways, just in terms of how we're developing in this country and how sprawling everything is outside of the center cities. But people want more nature. They don't want less of it, for sure.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say they want less open space or less nature.
Right. It's never happened. I mean, that people's favorite childhood memories are typically in some kind of nature, and when they build their ideal spaces and places, people tend to really focus on the outdoor spaces and places.
Yeah.
Even a workshop on housing, and we'll say you're right,
Mhm.
housing, they tend not to build the unit itself, so they won't. I don't think we've ever seen that where someone's been like, okay, well, here's my kitchen, here's my living room, I've got my flat screen TV, here's the rec room upstairs, and here's the, all the amenities that are advertised in new developments in cities.
Yeah.
Uh, barbecue area and blah blah. No one ever really builds that. They build what's outside. They build what they
Yeah.
can walk to, where they can hang out, who they can hang out with, that kind of thing. That's really weird.
Oh, that's so interesting. So, when is this plan, it's an active transportation plan.
Mm,
It's in the works still, it's not completed yet.
yeah.
Okay, do you know about what the schedule is, when it will be completed?
Yeah, so there are going to be two open houses coming up. They're going to be presenting, the prime contractor Fairfield is going to be presenting the preliminary findings, outcomes. So one's going to be in Davis. Don't quote me on where the other one's going to be. I'm not really sure. And then what they'll be doing is creating the actual plan. So identifying priority areas in each of these towns for improvements, for bike ped facilities, or road diets, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And of course, on a regional level, what the opportunities are for rails to trails projects for connecting these towns via walking and biking paths. And then there'll be another round of sharing what they've come up with. And then once they have that finalized, so this is actually a design, so it's an engagement and design process. So they are going to do some of the design work. That will be in the actual plan, design work. And then with that in place, they'll be able to apply, these towns will be able to apply for funding to
Uh-huh.
make these projects actually happen.
Oh,
So that's the good thing about this. It's not just a policy document that says, okay, we engage these people, here's what we heard, and here's what we think would be great to see. It's that plus design.
mhm.
And then with all that in place, then it's much more
Okay.
possible to apply for federal funding or other dollars to make these projects actually happen, because we'll actually have the design documents in place. So
Okay.
that's cool. So you don't feel like this project is this thing where we went and we engaged these people and they said all sorts of cool things, but you don't really know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
In this case, it's much more likely that a lot of these ideas or some of these ideas will actually see the light of day and be translated into physical changes in people's lives in these towns.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I'll look forward to seeing what comes out of this. Maybe we'll have to have a follow-up and
Yeah.
whatever it is, a year to
Absolutely.
see the outcome. Cool. All right. If our listeners want to follow you or reach out to you to ask questions or just, follow along with what you guys are doing, where should they do that?
Well, they can go to our websites, so www.placeit.org and www.prairieforum.com. There's social media, so James T. Rojas is his handle, and mine is Camper Pants, which I'm kind of stuck with. Handle, but I feel like if I change it, then I have to change so many things.
No,
So,
do not change that. That is an amazing name. Never change that.
thank you. I mean, it's the, kind of playful, goofy, lighthearted aspect of our work shining through. That's always a recurring theme with what we do. We're trying to take this serious. It's serious play, right? So we're taking the seriousness level down a little
Yeah.
bit. But the outcomes are meaningful and real and can really change people's lives for the better.
Yeah, perfect. And then I'll do a plug for your book too. You guys have a book.
We do. Dream Play Build. It's out on Island Press. The discount code is Place It, all caps. And so if you order it directly off the Island Press website, there's a little field where you can put in the discount code. So if you put in Place It, you'll get I can't remember what the discount is, but it's at least 10%.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and I read your book, so if anyone wants to really nerd out on some of the psychology behind all this, that's all in the book. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, John and James, so much for being on our Fireside Chats podcast.
You're welcome.
And it was lovely speaking with you.
Yeah.
And we'll see you maybe in a year or so for the follow-up. Yeah.
No, hopefully sooner, but thanks for having us. It's been really fun.
Yep.
All right. Take care.
All right, you too.